What is a true fact so baffling, it should be false? The record for most children born to one mother is 69. To the wife of Feofor Vasilyev, B. 1707 c. 1782. A peasant from Shia, Russia. In 27 labors, she gave birth to 16 pairs of twins, 7 sets of triplets and 4 sets of quadruplets. If sound could travel through space, the roar of the sun would be deafening even though it's 93 miles away. From 1613 and 1620 a samurai traveled to Rome by way of Mexico. During this time, Shakespeare was still alive. Virginia had been founded for around a decade. Galileo was accused of heresy. And Pocahontas arrived in England. He met the Pope. He was made a Roman citizen. His name was Hasekara Naga, and was the last Japanese person to officially visit Europe until around 1860. There is an extremely rare condition called Stone Man syndrome. It causes any smallest damage done to tissue to regrow into a bone. Speaking briefly, people affected by this sickness slowly turn into living statues as they get older. Stalin, Hitler, and Freud all lived in Vienna at the same time. If you earned $1 every second, it would take 921 years to have more money than Bill Gates. A 500 pounds cigarette smoking, beer drinking brown bear named Wojciech was enlisted and served in the Polish army during World War II. Private Wojciech helped the Polish win the brutal Battle of Monte Cassino, and was even promoted to corporal. Following the war, he retired in Scotland. We live many times closer to the last dinosaur than the first and last dinosaur did to each other. When Mt. Everest was first measured, it was exactly 29,000 feet. It was reported as 29,002 because exactly 29,000 was not believable. To scale, the distance between a nucleus and orbiting electron is 16 times longer than the distance between the Sun and Pluto. When a woman with breast implants is cremated, the implants will melt into goo. It drips to the bottom of the furnace, and needs to be cleaned up once cooled. There is no universally accepted definition of vegetable. It's a cultural and culinary term, and varies from place to place. Oxford University predates the Aztec Empire by over 200 years. And, for fun, one of my favorites, woolly mammoths were still around at the time the Great Pyramids in Giza were built. An eyewitness to Lincoln's assassination at Ford's Theater told his story on national television. If you're launching from Earth, the most difficult place to reach in the solar system is the Sun. The reason for this is that to fly directly into the Sun you need to first launch from Earth, and then remove all of your orbital velocity around the Sun. Anything less will just put you into a different orbit around the Sun rather than directly into it. The amount of power required for that to do it directly is basically impossible currently. As an alternative, you could, for relatively little power, fly all the way out to Pluto distance, slow down much less, and then fall back into the Sun. The trade-off being the travel time is now about 90 years. There are other in-between paths that could get you there for different balances of energy and time, but all of them are tougher than getting basically anywhere else in the solar system with an equivalent balance. There's a mission currently traveling to study the Sun, the Parker Solar Probe. It won't be flying directly in, but plans to make the closest passes than any probe ever has. It's going to make 7 passes by Venus to shed speed so it can get closer and closer to the Sun. The full flight time is planned as just less than 7 years. As of this post, they are 1 week shy of a year in. A morbidly obese person can survive with absolute starvation without any sickness or feeling ill, under close control. There have been studies since 60s. There is a patient in 1973 who went under a 382-day starvation diet for therapeutic purposes under close control with only vitamin and mineral supplements and water intake without protein, carbohydrate or fat intake, no food at all. Dropped from 207 kilograms to 88 kilograms and maintained it. After a follow-up checkup 5 years later, The patient was 96 kilograms. Stabilized. Prolonged fasting had no ill effects. If anybody is curious about the article, the PubMed ID is PMC2495396. If Earth was a basketball, to scale the moon would be a tennis ball. It would orbit around 7.5 meters away, which is a lot farther than most people think. If the nucleus of a hydrogen atom was a tennis ball, to scale the electron would orbit at about 2,500 meters away. There is no ball small enough to compare to how small electrons would still be at this scale. There is no good metric for the number of languages on Earth. This is mostly because linguists cannot agree on what constitutes a new language and what constitutes a dialect of an existing language. The best current metric of how many languages exist is the number of translations of the Christian Bible. Even if 99% of Earth's population thought you were unattractive, 76 million people would still find you attractive. There are more trees on the Earth than stars in the Milky Way. Every time you shuffle a deck of cards, you've probably made an entirely unique order, as compared to every other shuffle in history. You can fit every planet between the Earth and Moon, including all the gas giants. But if you lined up all of Jeff Bezos' money from end to end, it wouldn't fit between the Earth and Moon. It could go to the Moon and back 34 times. Jeff Bezos has enough money to make a ladder to the Moon, and to make it out of money. GPS satellites have to compensate for time dilation, because time runs at a different rate in orbit. Only 4 people have been to the Challenger Deep, the deepest part of the ocean. One of those people is James Cameron, the director of Titanic. In chess there are over 9 million variations after just 3 moves each. 288 billion different possible positions after 4 moves each. In a complete game there are more possible positions than there are electrons in the observable universe. If you shrink down our sun to the size of a white blood cell, the Milky Way galaxy would be equal to the size of the continental United States. Space is huge. Sense of smell is molecular, meaning that molecules of what you are smelling are actually inside of your body as a result of smelling them. Think about that the next time you enter a public restroom. Abraham Lincoln was born in 1809 and the first dinosaur fossil was discovered in 1819. This means that he went his early childhood without going through his dinosaur phase. Sad face. The speed of light is always the same, regardless of the relevant speed of the observer. Say you're standing still, and a car passes you at 60 miles per hour. It passes you at 60 miles per hour. Right? Say you're driving at 30 miles per hour and a car passes you at 60 miles per hour. Because you're already moving at 30. The car only moves away from you at 30 miles per hour. Light doesn't work this way. If you're standing still and turn on a flashlight, the beam of light moves away from you at light speed. But if you're moving at half the speed of light, and turn on a flashlight, the beam still moves away from you at light speed, even though it's only moving at the standard speed of light. So even people who aren't moving half the speed of light see it moving at the same speed as you do. Which isn't possible, but is somehow true. It makes no sense and makes me think there is a lot to physics we still have to learn. And I bet we find out a lot of the things we know are wrong. The phrase plastic surgery has nothing to do with the material. Plastic surgery as a field predates the development of plastics by 70 years. The two terms simply share a Greek word root meaning sculpted or reshaped. We live closer to the lifetime of Cleopatra than she did to the building of the Great Pyramids. In Florida it is illegal to tie an elephant to a parking meter without first paying the meter as if the elephant were a car. Where in Florida do you find live elephants? Please don't say Disney World and Dumbo. There used to be a radioactive energy drink called Roddy Thor that was in the US market for a decade from 1918 to 1928. Some of the more prominent users had to be buried in lead coffins. The USA is the third most populated nation on Earth. If you were able to add 1 billion people to the US population today, it would still be the third most populated nation on Earth.